But it's almost like aging for women is like the last taboo.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to age, are we? We have to look young and we have to, feel young and be relevant. Otherwise, it's time just to sit quietly over in the corner and let the younger ones take their turn. Well, no, I think that's not right. We've earned it. By the time we get to, 40, 50, 60, beyond, boy, have we earned it. I'm now just about to turn 63. I am fitter, stronger, more mentally sorted, happier. Just living the best life compared to any other decade. I didn't start lifting weights until I was kind of late 50s. I wish I'd started early.
Really?
I really do. And I get heavier and heavier. And my Christmas present to myself every year is the next size up of dumbbells.
Love
so,
that.
I mean, how geeky is that?
Hello, Liz.
Hello.
So good to see you. Last time I saw you
Nice.
was at the Happy Place Festival.
We were
so glad to
wandering
have you
around
there.
in the sunshine and just having a dreamy time.
It was so hot, wasn't it?
It was really hot. I had a parasol with me to keep the sun off.
I know, it was gorgeous. We're going to talk about sun in
Okay.
a bit because, as you can see from this amazing copy of your book, How to Age, I've dogged literally every other page.
I was going to say, it's looking a bit tatty already.
It's very tatty. It's been travelling around with me and I've gained so much from it. And the whole conversation around ageing, when it comes to women more specifically, is usually exclusively focusing on what our faces look like and maybe bodies, but it is a lot on the face. This is so much more and so much deeper. The conversation has been like the tip of the iceberg. You've done the whole rest of it.
I do feel that. I mean, it's years and years of research. I started writing books nearly 40 years ago, and this is the one. And I kind of feel that this is the one that I've been gearing up to for decades.
Whoa.
It's the book that I wish I'd been able to read when I was your age, when I was the age of my daughters. I've got one who's 25 and one who's 35, because I would have saved myself a lot of pain if I'd known this stuff earlier.
Yeah.
But it's also never too late. I've also given it to my mum, who's in her late 80s, because she can start to make changes now and make a difference to the last years of her life to make them, less painful and more mobile and more mentally active.
This is what I love, is that you've got all of this knowledge and wisdom and the research that you've done teamed with your personal experience of now being in your 60s and I want to say thriving. Is that how you feel?
Oh, so thriving. When I look back, I'm now just about to turn 63. I am fitter, stronger, more mentally sorted, happier. Just living the best life compared to any other decade. When I look back to my 40s, perimenopause, I was overweight, I was unhappy, I was stressed, I wasn't sleeping. I had the kind of the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I think a lot of women will relate to that because we are multitaskers, aren't we? We're doers, we're caregivers, and we are that squeezed generation. We're often looking after younger children and older parents and our community and our friends and trying to hold our relationships together and all of that. And I think we lose ourselves and not only our identity, but our sense of what we need to do in order to thrive and the importance of that. So it's about also reprioritising ourselves. It's a bit of a manifesto, if you like, for women, for womankind.
I mean, it's hard. Like you talk about in the book, your 40s being a time of physical and mental pain, and you had a lot of stuff going on and relationships breaking down, divorce. I'm in the middle of all of that right now, and I'm looking after kids, and it is so overwhelming. Obviously, in hindsight, you can look back and think, I wish I'd done things differently or prioritised myself. How would you, lots of my listeners will be a similar age to me. Where do you begin with that? If you've never prioritised your own well-being or yourself, where do you start?
I think the first thing is just to make that decision that you're going to move yourself up the to-do list.
Yeah.
You can't just leave yourself at the bottom. And it's not selfish. Self-care isn't selfish because if we can't cope, then we can't cope to help others. So, it really, really is that important. And I think it starts small. There's a lot of noise out there in the wellness space that feels really overwhelming. You've got to eat this, you've got to move like that, you've got to take this, you've got to buy this gadget. What I say in How to Age is I come back to really simple basics. So it's working on a cellular level, because what I really identified with all the research about aging is it comes down to these little teeny things in our cells called mitochondria. And mitochondria is a word that we're going to be hearing so much more of in the future. All the longevity researchers, all the academics, the medics, they're all focusing on mitochondria. So mitochondria are basically little organelles in virtually every cell in the body. And they're like batteries. You can think of them as tiny micro batteries. They make our energy. So we need that energy for everything, from brain health to literal energy for moving around, for controlling our hormones, for repairing DNA damage, for creating skin cells. Everything revolves around our mitochondria. And once you kind of take that on board, you then think, okay, so if it all revolves around mitochondria, how do I better protect them? How do I look after my mitochondria? In the same way that I think we've got used to thinking about our gut microbes. How do we look after our gut microbes? How do we get a beneficial gut bacteria going? We're eating yogurt and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But nobody's really talking about mitochondria. So what I did was I went back and I looked at what mitochondria need to thrive. And they need really simple things. Yeah. They need daylight. They need plenty of the right kind of water. They need connection with nature and earth. Even things like standing barefoot on the ground is actually helping to support your mitochondria. So these things, they're ancestral. You know, we've evolved over time. We've forgotten them. We've moved indoors. We're sitting under LED lighting, which is like the junk food equivalent of ultra-processed food, basically. These LED single wavelength blue light bulbs are so destructive to our mitochondria. And, you know, in trying to be energy efficient, we just didn't look at the long-term implication of how lighting can make you sick.
No, I mean, that's what I loved about this book is that, first of all, I'd never heard the word mitochondria. And I was talking to my kids about it. We were on a long train journey and I was reading your book. And my son was like, oh, yeah, I've done that in science. I was like,
great.
Oh, Christ, I'm so stupid. Like I had no clue. But he was obviously learning about it within,
from a
like,
cell
the
point of view.
And whatnot.
Yeah.
But it was so fascinating to get into a conversation with him about it because he's also... a 13-year-old boy who wants to like mainline junk food and play computer games and all the stuff that as a parent you're thinking, oh, I know this isn't great because it doesn't feel good. But actually, when I apply all of that to my own body, a lot of the time I'm not picking up the signals. And that's why I love that you really deeply dive into the basics. So you've touched on light. Let's talk about light because it's a big subject in the book. It is a massive
subject. The whole book could have just been about light, frankly, but it's only one section.
But it again is something that in the wellness space and in the conversation of aging, I've not heard it being mentioned at all, I wouldn't say. You know, we get told, eat this, do this exercise, you know, all the stuff, put this face cream on, whatever it is, LED mask, but not the natural free sunlight that we have available to all of us is not included in the conversation. So how important is natural daylight for our bodies?
It's 100%. It's everything. It's, you know, there's an expression, Tina, you know, there is no alternative. And it is literally everything. And I think that the skeptic in me would say, well, of course it's not promoted because there's nothing to sell. It's free. We get out there and it is crucial. So, for example, I'm sure you've heard of the circadian rhythm and the 24-hour biological clock that we all run on. And in fact, even more than that, each cell in the body has its own circadian clock. So, you know, when you start getting into circadian rhythms, it's a fascinating subject. So the circadian clock in the body, which is part of our biology, it's what gets us up in the morning and helps us sleep at night. And it's this lovely sleep-wake cycle. It controls our hormone release and our cortisol and all of these great things. It runs on light. And it makes sense because when you think ancestrally, we were outdoor beings. We got up when the sun came up and we worked outside and it was daylight. And then when it got dark, we couldn't do anything anymore. So we had to come in. And if we were lucky, we maybe lit a lamp or a fire and we could just about see. Then, of course, when the electric light bulb came, that completely changed. Nothing, I think, more in the history of time has changed mankind more than the invention of the electric light bulb. Because it brought us indoors. It brought us working all hours. It brought us, you know, obviously later on we've got, you know, screens now. We've got, you know, we're scrolling in bed. We're binging box sets at night. We've got that blue light that's pinging at us all the time. And our body is not responding well to that. It really isn't. And when you get up early in the morning and you look at the daybreak, for example, light is not static. It changes throughout the day. So first thing in the morning, I'm not a morning person. I don't know about you.
I am 100% morning.
Well, then you'll love this.
I'm terrible at night. My personality dies after 5 p.m.
Well, I wish we could swap because I struggle to get up, but I know how important it is. If you can, get up and get outside within the first 60 minutes of daybreak. Much easier for me in the winter because it's later.
Yeah.
Much harder in the summer when that's like 4:30 in the morning, you know. But as close as you can, if you can't physically get outside, open a window. You need that real light. You don't need it filtered through glass. You need to get your eyeballs seeing the daylight. So even on a cloudy day, it's not about sun, it's about light. And what happens as the sun comes up, in the beginning, there's no UV. You just get all the near infrared and the far and the red light and the green light and the blue light that comes up. And your brain recognizes it. So these little mitochondria I talked about, the highest concentration of mitochondria in the body is in the eyeball, in the retina.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that, because the mitochondria are controlling all these things and they're taking signals, light cue signals. They're telling the brain to produce various neurochemicals, and everything then starts to gear into action. We start to wake up. We start to feel energized. We've got the ability to carry on and get on with the day. It also sets our clock. It's a bit like a kind of... one of those timers that you can do for lighting later in the day. You set the timer. What it does is that early morning light signal primes the production of melatonin. And that's the sleep hormone. And that's going to help us sleep better. So by getting up, looking at a bit of daylight, doesn't have to be for very long. The longer the better. But, 5 minutes is better than no minutes.
God.
And then the light changes through the day. So then you start to get UVA starts to rise. That's the first thing. Then depending on the time of year, around 11 o'clock, you might start to get UVB. Then that peaks around kind of the solar noon, and then it tails off again. And then by the time you come into sort of dusk and sunset, the UV has gone and you're just left with that lovely red light. So it's the same red light that people are going out and spending hundreds of pounds on LED face masks,
No
to get the
way.
red light. Go and watch the sunset, and it's free. And it will do more for your mitochondria.
Do you know what? I love that you're breaking down the science of it so we can really hear what it's doing. Because I got told, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago by a friend, go and stand outside every morning for 10 minutes when you wake up. And I thought, what the fuck is that going to do? I literally just thought, I'm not doing that. Like, that just sounds ludicrous because I didn't
Great advice.
understand.
Yes, when you know why. Yeah, when you know why.
need to know the why. So, okay, most of us can hopefully do that, if not every day, even at weekends.
Yeah,
those 10 minutes.
The key thing that the body loves rhythm. We talked about circadian rhythm, and again, this was a real learning for me because I used to, work really hard during the week and then think, right, I'm going to have the weekend off. I'm going to lie in, get up late, potter about. No, the body likes consistency. So if you're up at 7 every morning, Saturday, Sunday, up at 7.
Do it.
Because it really helps the body kind of feel grounded and for all our circadian clocks to just be in balance. Otherwise, you're kind of living in a bit of jet lag and then you play catch up in the week. So I know it's hard. The key thing is to try and get to bed that little bit earlier, or maybe just have a nap in the afternoon if you're tired.
So we understand the huge benefits now of getting that natural light. Let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, which is junk lighting.
Yes.
So we're sat under a lot of artificial
One of my
light now.
favourite subjects is junk lighting.
Like, this is making me look better, but it's doing my mitochondria.
I brought these just in case.
Love.
Yeah, these are my blue blockers. So I carry them with me all the time. I was walking through a train station the other day. It was really brightly lit. It was just like white light. There was no daylight anywhere. And I began to feel a bit edgy because I think once you start becoming aware of how the light makes you feel, you can react to it. And it's like a lot of people who might get migraine, for example.
Right.
They find that coloured lenses are really beneficial for them, different colours, because it's blocking certain wavelengths of light. So a couple of things to do with light indoors. So yes, LED lights, really not great. If you can get just one incandescent light bulb, the old-fashioned kind, pop it in a desk lamp. Say you're at work and you can't obviously go and change all your office lighting, but you could bring in a desk lamp. You could put an old-fashioned lamp in it, have that on your desk or your workspace or at home or wherever. And that is giving you some of the broader spectrum light frequencies that will counteract the LED.
So what is the junk lighting doing to our bodies, our cells?
It's basically blocking, or it's not providing the full spectrum of wavelengths that we need. It's just providing one very short wave, very intense, highly stimulating form of light, which if you're under it 24/7, one of the things that really scares me is I had to go and visit a friend in hospital recently. And, you go into the intensive care unit 24 hours of bright blue LED lighting. And there was a guy I interviewed for the book, amazing guy, Professor Glenn Jeffrey, and he is a neuroscientist, professor of neuroscience and ophthalmology. So he kind of combines brains and eyes, and he's passionate about light. And he says, one of his big missions is to try and get LED lighting out of hospital environments, out of schools, out of nurseries, out of care homes.
I mean, bloody everywhere.
It's everywhere. The road to hell is paved with good intention, isn't it?
Yeah.
We introduced all this lighting thing. Oh, it's all so energy efficient and it's so bright and uplifting without looking at the science of actually what it's doing to our bodies. But the good news is that A, we can switch it off.
Yeah.
B, we can go to old-fashioned light bulbs, even not the whole, caboodle, but a little bit. Turn your dimmer switch down. If you want to scroll at night or you want to be on TV, get your blue blockers on. Just be aware of it. Start being light aware. And it's amazing how much better you will feel almost immediately. It's like an instant effect.
And when we look at phones, which, we've all got phones. We all know we're on them too much. We all know that we're probably imbibing too much content, looking at this blue light too much. But that's not the end of it. It's also what the phone is emitting.
Oh, yeah.
How is that impacting us again? Because it's a conversation we go, yeah, we know, I've been on it too long and I've looked at too much, but it's more than that.
Well, this is where you get into really interesting territory when we start talking about energy and other forms of invisible wavelengths. So light is obviously visible. Then I talk about things like sound, because you've got sound waves, which is, you can't see, but you can hear, and that has an impact on our cells as well. And then EMF, so electromagnetic frequency. And there's a lot that's natural. So lots of things, walking barefoot on the ground that we were talking about, that gives you your lovely natural, non-negative ions, for example, which has been shown to reduce inflammation in the body. It's very calming. When you stand beside waterfalls, that's producing all these lovely negative ions and we feel better for it. Unfortunately, we've also got all these what they call NN EMFs, which is the non-native EMFs. So these are new frequencies. So as a human being, as a race, as a species, we have never been exposed to 3G, 4G, 5G. We just haven't been exposed to microwaves and, all these, Wi-Fi and all of this stuff. This is very new. And there are ongoing studies looking at the negative impact on a cellular level. Nobody really wants to talk about it because it's kind of here.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's about mitigating it. So when I was researching the book, I bought quite an advanced reader to see where the EMF radiation was coming from and what I could do to reduce it. So simple things like switching off your Wi-Fi router at night. Mm-hmm. You can do that so you're not sleeping with it. I noticed that the readings were highest when I was charging something. So I used to sit with my laptop plugged in all the time on my desk, charging, because I want to keep it going, full of juice. That is really high. That gives off a lot of EMF radiation. So I now unplug it, and when I'm away from my desk, I plug it in and it's charging. I don't charge my phone next to my head at night when I'm sleeping. I make sure the kids don't do that either.
Yeah.
So it's little things, and I think it's cumulative. People will say, yes, but, there's no evidence. Well, there is some evidence, and I've got a whole section of references in the book because I want to be able to say to the skeptics, hey, look, just go look it up. It is there. But when you think about it, who is going to fund studies showing that, plugging your phone in could have a disruptive effect on your cells? The tech giants certainly aren't going to do it.
No.
And nobody really wants to hear that. So it's not about saying, let's go back to the Stone Age. It's about saying there could be potential damaging effects from this. How do we mitigate those?
Yeah.
And how are we, let's just be sensible about it. Let's just have a measured approach and do what we can do. We know that cells behave better if they're in a more natural environment. So stands to reason.
And like you've just said, it's as simple as not charging your laptop or your phone by your head. Like we can all do that. It's not like we've got to overhaul our whole lifestyle. It's just a tiny change that is going to benefit us in all areas.
Well, hopefully, I think I'm more concerned. I mean, I've got 5 kids and I'm concerned about how, they're older now, but, growing up, what's the impact on youngsters on a growing, developing brain? And, you've obviously got all the issues about content, about what they're watching for sure. But, the actual act of all the radiation that's surrounding them, how can we minimize that for them? And give them some of the other benefits. And it's just getting into the habit, isn't it, really? Of realising that this is something that you can do. It's like I say to my kids, don't have Bluetooth earbuds, just plug in. Because, again, Bluetooth, what's the impact? It's very close to your brain.
Yeah, and I guess we don't know at this point the full extent.
Of course we haven't had long-term studies. It hasn't been around long enough to know for sure. So I'd rather be cautious.
Yeah, which is totally understandable. With the science that you've got and the research that you've got, why would you not make that change?
Once you start looking at mitochondria, and I think, you can track this. So, for example, when I was doing the whole section on EMF, and I had my little meter and everything, I had various sleep trackers and sleep gadgets. And I tested my sleep, and I slept with the phone right next to my head, and I tested it with my phone plugged in right next to my head, and then I tested it with my Wi-Fi router switched off, and guess which one gave me the best night's sleep?
Yeah.
No prizes for guessing. So, is it a randomized control trial? No. Do I feel better for doing it personally? Yes. So it's something that I would advocate.
And then let's talk about water. This is a big subject. And it's not news to any of us that our water is shitty, quite literally, but also just full of, I've read this in studies before where, you've got, whether it's HRT or the pill in there or antidepressants, you've got
you have
so much shit in our water. And, we asked, a lot of people are just like, well, I've only got tap water. I don't want to keep buying bottled water, or maybe haven't got access to buy a filter to put under your sink or whatever. What can we do about that? Because again, that seems to be having a hugely negative impact on us in all areas.
I think potentially. And I think, first of all, we have to say that here in the Western world, we are very lucky. We turn on the tap, we get clean drinking water. I've just come back from East Africa, and that's not the case. So, this is not about being one of the worried well. It's about kind of saying, okay, what we have is good, but it's not as good as it could be. And how can we make it better in a simple, to your point, effective, affordable way? I would say, getting some form of water filtering is really useful. It depends where you live. When I go and stay with friends, up in the Lake District, for example, I taste the water and it tastes different to my London tap water.
Yeah.
I don't taste the chlorine. It just doesn't seem, I don't know how many times, is it 7 times that the water's been through a human body when you pour it out of the tap in London? Because we're recirculating it all the time. It's going into the sewage system and it's being cleaned, and then it's, it's coming back out again. And yes, it does. Depending on your area, it does contain traces of pharmaceuticals. You've got pesticide residue. You've got agricultural runoff from soil. They've obviously got to chlorinate the water to make it safe and all the rest of it. So you can get different types of water filters. You can buy a simple jug. So that's the least expensive. You can then upgrade it to an under sink unit. You can actually do something really simple, like stick a stick of charcoal in your water flask, and that will help. It won't clear things like fluoride or chlorine, but it will, do a certain amount to take the taste, make the taste better. And then you can really go up to things like reverse osmosis filtration systems if you're really into it. And then you start to get into all sorts of other properties that water has. Because again, water it's not static. It's an energetic thing. And we need it. And I think as we age, what's quite interesting is that our thirst signals blunt. So we don't realise as we get older that we need to stay well hydrated. That's really important for women because we're much more prone to things like recurrent UTIs. And you need to have a lot of, water, stay really well hydrated. And the problem is that, for women especially, I think, you're going out and about, just practical things like where are all the public loos? Where do you go when you want to wee?
Yeah.
And so do you think when you're travelling, I'm not going to drink that extra glass of water because I'm going to get caught short?
God,
and I'm
I think
going
like
out.
that. I've got the weakest bladder of all time. And
that's so bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why isn't the Mayor of London and all these cities prioritising safe public loos for everybody? That would be just a really simple, great healthcare message.
It would,
and particularly for women.
So many coffee shops don't have toilets these days. So
No.
you can't even rely on going to like buy a drink you don't want to use the toilet. And I mean, I know that is one for me where I know, me and my brother talk about this quite a lot because we're slightly water obsessed, that we feel like shit if we don't drink enough water.
Yeah.
Instantly a bit headachy,
absolutely,
foggy.
Yeah.
Our parents are of the generation. I mean, they come round to my house and they're like, oh, how can you drink water? It's so gross. And I'm like, I would feel like death. They drink none.
I know, it's
They just drink
extraordinary.
tea.
The older generation, they never walked around with water bottles.
No.
But they did drink a lot of tea, which is quite hydrating.
My mum drinks like 20 cups of tea a day.
Yeah, you see, that is good. I mean, she's
crazy.
drinking liquid. And tea is good because it has a little bit of magnesium in it. It's got a little bit of L-theanine that helps to keep you calm. A little bit of caffeine, give you a lift. So yeah, I think tea is a health drink.
I was glad that you said coffee's good. Because I was thinking,
great.
if you had written that coffee was bad, I'm going to have to throw this book in the fire.
Wouldn't be
luckily, coffee, fine.
And studies show that those who drink coffee live longer than those who don't. So, and it's not the caffeine. They don't think. Well, it could be. The caffeine could have a stimulating effect. It kind of helps you work out a bit harder in the gym for sure. So it could make you a bit more motivated to move. But it's more the chlorogenic acid. So it's more the polyphenols in coffee,
right?
Which again is coming back to cell protection. You know, everything, when you think about it on a fundamental level, is coming back to what's the impact on our cells? What's it doing to our cells? Because we are a collection of cells. And as we age, our cells die off, or they misbehave, or they mutate, or we might, become susceptible to diseases or develop cancers and all these kinds of things. If we can prioritize keeping our cells as healthy as possible and really start thinking inwardly about, every mouthful you eat, you don't have to be obsessive about it, but it's like, what's this doing to my cells? Is this building them or is this knocking them down? This movement that I'm doing, this way I'm living, this light that I'm sitting under, this drink that I'm drinking, it's just an interesting exercise to say, is this a positive or a negative or a neutral? And just try and incorporate as many of the small little positives as we can. And before you know it, you'll start to feel so much better. You'll want to do more and more.
Yeah, I think that's the only incentive that works is that. Because when we're doing something, whether it's to look better or even if it is for longevity, that's kind of a slightly more abstract concept, isn't it? Because we're so in the immediate life we're living. But I think especially when it comes to women, and so much is focused on what we look like, unless we feel that there are immediate results, we're like, I'm binning this. And actually, so much of the time we continue with habits that we know aren't working for us.
Yeah.
Whether it's just we're in the habit of it feels too much effort to change, or we've read in a magazine once that you should eat this or you shouldn't eat that, or you should exercise like this. And I mean, is it the case that it is, some of this stuff is bespoke? For some people, a certain diet will work, or for some people, a certain exercise regime will work.
Yeah, I think certainly when you look at food, we have genetic variations. So they're called SNPs, and, they are basically determining how our own personal makeup is. And I think in the future, we're going to be seeing more personalised medicine, because we know that certain medications work for certain groups of people who have this particular genetic variation. So if you know what your genetic variation is, then you can be better helped with healthcare. So, for example, I have a variation in my genes that I don't make glutathione. And glutathione is like the master antioxidant. It's really, really important. And we make it, most people make it by using other antioxidants like vitamin C, for example, and turning that into glutathione. And glutathione is one of the key things that helps our mitochondria. So it's very good for aging. So what I do is, because I did a genetic test and I discovered that I don't make it, I now take glutathione as a supplement.
Right.
And that's actually very useful. And when I was researching the book, I discovered that about a third of us don't make glutathione, because we haven't, particularly in the Western world, we don't have the genetic makeup to do it. Somewhere along in the mists of time, we've lost that capacity to make it. Now, you could do an expensive genetic test to find out for sure, or you could just try it.
Yeah, see how you feel.
Buy some liposomal glutathione, take it at bedtime, and when you wake up in the morning, do you have more energy? If you find, wow, that was good, that probably means that you're not making it.
Right.
If you have no difference, then fine, save your money and don't buy it. So, I'm trying to give people little insights into things that will really move the needle, things that will really make a difference. And you talk there about skin, for example. And obviously you can spend a lot of money on skincare and all of that. And, me having had a past life working in skincare, I know a bit about what goes on with the skin. But don't forget that we make our own skin. We make our own skin cells. So how do we get better skin? We get better skin by having better skin cells, and we make our skin cells through better mitochondria. So if you come back to like the early morning protocol, what's happening when that early morning light begins to appear is some of that light signaling is talking to the fibroblasts, which are little cells in the skin that make collagen. And they're giving those little fibroblasts a message saying, okay, guys, it's time to wake up and make some more collagen, because collagen makes your skin slightly thicker and it's a protective mechanism. So we want collagen. That's why we buy expensive collagen supplements, because we want our skin to be all kind of plump and springy. But our skin will make more collagen if the fibroblasts are told to do that. And they're told to do that by the light signals that we get first thing in the morning.
So this is a big conversation that we haven't touched on yet. But the whole sun factor discussion, should we be wearing SPF all year round, all day long? It's much debated online, but I loved your approach to it, which is complex and nuanced.
It's
and
nuanced.
Has to be talked about sensibly. It's not never wear SPF or you have to wear it all the time.
Absolutely. And I think, I know that I'm anticipating a lot of comments on the whole SPF thing. And I'm going to say, listen, read what I have to say, because it's a lot of detail. It's not simple. For number one, there's no one size fits all. So in terms of sun and sun exposure, sun can be very damaging. There's no question. You need to respect the sun. It's not always your friend, So particularly if you're very fair skinned, particularly if the sun is very strong, particularly if you're outside and exposed to it for a long period of time. So it's about being measured. Depends on your skin type. It depends on the time of year, and it depends how long you're exposed to it. And it also depends on how you've set your skin up. So that early morning light signaling is prepping our skin to have some UV exposure later in the day. So it's actually producing anti-inflammatory signals that say, hey, okay, it's daylight, let's wake up, let's get the skin ready, because later on we're going to be outside working in the fields or whatever. We need some protection from the UVA that will rise, and then the UVB. So it's giving us that mechanism to build in inner protection. If we miss that early signal, we stay indoors all the time. Midday, we go out and we eat our sandwiches outside. Suddenly, broad sunlight, strong UV, middle of the summer, our skin's going to burn and get damaged. Why? Because we haven't done that early morning bit of setup, and we've just gone out at a time of day which is not appropriate for our skin type. So short answer, do we need SPF all year round wherever we are in the world and whatever our skin type? No, because why would you need to be protected from the sun when there's no sun?
So first thing in the morning, crucially,
first
you're not
thing in the
wearing
morning.
any.
No,
you
you're
need
going
your skin
out
to absorb it.
Well, there's very, very low UVA. There's no UVB, because that doesn't come till much later in the day. Even in the height of summer, we're not getting UVB till like 10:30, 11, depending on your latitude. So, I think it's about being measured. For me personally, I prefer to cover my skin with clothing or a big hat or both, stay in the shade. I don't go out and seek the sun when it's really hot. Do I use sunscreen? Yes, absolutely I do. I use it when I need to, when I'm out in strong sunlight. But, even if you look at the NICE guidelines, it's saying, be very careful at peak times between 11 and 3. That's the key time. But also remember that we make vitamin D through sunlight. And vitamin D, it's actually a misnomer. It's not really a vitamin. It acts more like a hormone. And it has so many activities within the body. We're not really fully understanding what vitamin D is doing, but it's certainly controlling all sorts of things. And we know that it's implicated in our immune system and, and hormonal activity. So we need vitamin D. And yes, of course, you can go and buy supplements, but actually they probably don't work on all the pathways that natural vitamin D does, because again, it's it's complicated. You have researchers and academics who spend their entire lives just studying vitamin D, and even they're not aware of all the things that it's doing for us. So
I want to get onto supplements in a minute, but prior to that, I think we need to sort of dive more deeply into diet. Because again, whenever I've watched TV shows about the blue zones where you've got en masse centenarians who are living these brilliant lives, you see several themes that you talk about in the book, whether it's the level of community, which we'll get onto, and physical activity. But diet seems to really be the cornerstone of a lot of those areas, how they're cooking, but also fundamentally what they're eating. What can we learn from those areas, and what for longevity? And this is not just about, you know, looking younger, about having that agility later in life, to have the wellness later in life, to enjoy that period, if we're lucky, between like 70 and 90, where we are still, we're not in a hospital or having to sit in a chair, that we can still move about and live vibrantly. What should we be eating, or is there a way that we should be eating?
I think for women particularly, you know, from sort of midlife onwards, we need to really prioritise protein. You know, protein is what's building our muscles, it's maintaining muscle mass, it's helping to prevent things like sarcopenia when we start to lose our muscle, and that's what creates frailty. So we want to keep our strength going. And so, you know, whenever I look at a plate of what I'm eating, it's like my first thought is, where's the protein? And then I'll build around it, and I'll put, you know, green veggies around it. And low carb is kind of like probably the golden rule. And making sure that you are getting enough things like omega-3s from fish. So oily fish is really good, or a similar omega-3 supplement if you don't want to eat fish. But, you know, protein for me is always the kind of the first thing. And then building things, because, you know, women, we're likely to be low in iron. So, you know, where's your iron coming from? You know, you've got to look at, if you're having a restricted diet, where's your B12 coming from? Are you getting enough B6? Where's your iodine? Where's your taurine and your choline and your, you know, there are just so many other things that you just need to make sure that you're getting a wide variety of foods, and ideally food first. You know, I talk a lot about supplements in the book, but they are supplementary. They're not instead of. You know, when you think about what the word supplement actually means, it means supplementary too. So it's not you can have this or you can take a pill. It's like, let's do food first, pile all the good stuff onto the plate, and then see what we might be missing, or what's been taken out through food processing or factory farming or intensive, you know, rearing of, you know, animals or crops, for example. And, you know, then you get into all the spraying with glyphosate and all the other kind of disrupting chemicals that go on.
What can we actually eat? God, it's crazy. I mean,
eggs, number one, that would be my thing.
Eggs are your number one?
I would say, because they are the most complete form of protein. They're inexpensive, they're easy, they're versatile, and it's how I start every day. It was Faye Weldon who drew that amazing advertising slogan. I think it was in the 70s. She used to work for an ad agency, and her slogan was "Go to work on an egg." And then there was a little cartoon, I think, of somebody like bicycling along on an egg. And, you know, and it is true, you know, you can go to work on an egg or three, and lots of great things. And you've got to eat the yolk.
Yeah.
Because that's where the goodness is. And when you think about what an egg does, if it's fertilized, it grows into a chicken, and all the nutrients needed for that kind of genesis are within the yolk of the egg.
Well, this is it, like the good fat conversation is necessary, because I certainly grew up in like such a toxic time where there was not only a lot of processed foods and ready meals, but it was also like, don't eat fat.
Yeah,
and now
fat.
I would say my body craves good fat. I'm obsessed with eating like nuts and peanut butter.
Yep.
And I've just
extra virgin olive oil.
I've gone back to being veggie. I was vegan for a bit, and this pisses off vegans all the time, but it's my story.
It's your
Nobody
body, your
else's.
choice.
My body.
Yeah,
I crave like cheese and outside of the veggie conversation, olive oil. My body craves fat more than anything else. And I think you get to an age where you're much more in tune with, okay, I'm hungry, but what do I really want? And what do I desire? And it's usually what you need. I crave fats. And I think rewriting that whole diet story that we grew up with in the 90s about don't eat fats, have an egg white only omelette, and don't eat this, don't eat that. And actually good fats are so essential for us.
So especially for women, because, cholesterol, which is the kind of the good fat, the good building blocks, had a very bad press, but it's actually really important. That is the mothership from which all our other hormones are created. Our progesterone, our estrogen, all comes from those healthy fats. And we do need, the body makes the majority of its own cholesterol anyway, but we do need to have good, healthy fats in the diet. And actually, my very first book, which I wrote 35 years ago, was called Vital Oils. And it was totally counterculture because it was all about healthy fats.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, what are you saying? Everything was low-fat yogurt and low-fat cottage cheese. And I was nearly...
Oh my God, I remember eating cottage cheese in the 90s.
Well, now
with
it's come back.
in it.
Or cottage cheese and pineapple chunks. Everyone's into cottage cheese now because it's high in protein.
Right, okay.
So, but full fat, you want really...
The full fat stuff.
Full fat cottage cheese, yeah,
yes.
I love that.
And then when we move on to exercise, again, I think it's a very confusing time being my age where you're told, do short bursts of HIIT exercise, don't do HIIT exercise, run, don't run. You're like, oh my God, wait, what am I, am I meant to do a bit of everything or stop certain things? Is there a golden rule to how we should be moving?
I think it depends on what works for you, because I think, I don't want to be too prescriptive, but I think overall what the body likes is variety.
Yeah.
So, in the book I talk about doing, my own routine is I do a yoga class on a Saturday. I run maybe twice a week, not for very far, because I think you get to a stage, certainly when you're older, where you overtrain.
Yeah.
And then it impacts your immune system negatively. So you need to do enough to be cardiovascular and to, help your VO2 max and for kind of to get slightly breathless, but not enough, to really risk injury. That's the other thing. Weights. Do you lift weights or do you do push-ups?
I do a lot of push-ups.
Great.
I love doing push-ups.
That's a win.
And also in yoga, there's a lot of like the chaturanga push-up, but I do a lot of, that's been my thing in the last few years, like body weight stuff.
Yes.
But I don't lift weights. But this is something, again, that from many of my friends one of my friends is very into weightlifting and it's changed her life for the better.
Oh, I think,
so
I agree.
this is key for us at this age.
Yes, if you can get into that as a habit. I didn't start lifting weights until I was kind of late 50s. I wish I'd started earlier.
Really?
I really do. And I get heavier and heavier. And my Christmas present to myself every year is the next size up of dumbbells.
Love
so,
that.
How geeky is that? But I'm now I lift, so I squat 44 kilos. So my new friends are 22 kilos, and then I'm kind of working up. And you just get progressively heavier. And the great thing is it doesn't take very much time. So it's really quick. And it builds not only muscle, so it's, improving the condition of your arms and your shape. Physically, it's enabling you to, I've got grandkids, I'm kind of lifting up and carrying around. I feel mentally and emotionally more resilient because I know I'm physically more robust and stronger. And it's good for our bones. We've got to look after our skeletal system as we age because that's what's literally keeping us up and supporting us.
And also you hear, and this is, if people listening are my age, you sort of, again, it's quite abstract to think of yourself as a much older person, but I've had people in my life who have been elderly and a fall has been the downfall.
Oh, literally.
It's not a big illness, it's not an accident, it's they've had a fall, literally, like from standing up to they've tripped over or something. Yeah. And that has been the very quick descent from there. Yeah. So I think leg strength is something that we do need to keep cultivating.
If you can just get into the habit of brushing your teeth standing on one leg. Ideally with the wrong hand, because then it's also kind of a good brain exercise.
Good for the brain, yeah.
But and then you shut your eyes, and that's really hard. That's when I do tend to fall over. So, but you've got to do it next to something that you can hold on to. But balance, when you think about you're right. A friend of mine broke her hip recently. She literally just slipped off the curb. So, or you just trip on that last step in the stairs.
Yeah.
And you've got to be strong enough to be able to get up when you do fall. But then, let's keep our bones strong so that if you do fall, you kind of bounce.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love is, as well as the really like full-on scientific stuffing here and looking at the intricacy of cells, etc., towards the end of the book, it is a lot more about stuff that, again, we know and we could go, yeah, whatever. But connection, human connection and its importance. And we know that there's been, certainly since the pandemic, this kind of loneliness epidemic going on, how much it's impacting not only our mental health, but it's actually affecting, again, our cells and our physical bodies. How so in a detrimental way?
Very much so. And, there have been studies that show that loneliness is quite literally a killer. People who live on their own. Now, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Some people would just love to be alone.
Yeah.
They're happily single, they're living their own lives, and they like their own company, and that's great. That's different. But when you are feeling lonely or excluded, and you talk about blue zones, and I was filming for This Morning a long time ago, looking at all the blue zones, and we went to various places, Icaria in Greece and Sardinia, and it is true, there is this strong sense of community. And if you can find your tribe, hopefully you're fortunate enough to have family, if not extended family, your local community, your faith group, your school, your workplace, whatever it is, a local hobby club. It's really important to have people that you can physically connect with and also give back. I think when you get to an older stage in life, you kind of think, I don't want to get to the end of my life and think, well, what was all that about? Was that it? Did I leave the world a better place, hopefully, for me having been in it? What have I learned that I can pass on? And you get so much out of doing something like volunteering.
Yeah.
Helping other people. It doesn't have to be, giving lots of money to charity. It could be giving your time, giving your knowledge. Even for those who can't get out, you can train to be a Samaritan. You can help on the end of a phone. You can do it wherever you are. And you feel better for it. You're producing all those happy chemicals in your brain.
Maybe that is even actually an easier way to initiate that if you are feeling in a bad place. Because I think back to like a time in my 30s where socializing almost felt unsafe to me because I would spiral so massively after into, what have I said? Was that bad? I would so I started to slightly ostracize myself from people and become a bit of a hermit because it was just, this is safe. I'm home. I'm on my own. I'm safe. Because the thought of integrating into any group just felt like, that's not doable for me right now. But I think actually if I'd had the wherewithal to go, I could be, it doesn't have to be this kind of like we're having small talk moment. It could have been that. That could have been something very helpful to me back then. Because I think it's hard when you feel you're out of practice, you haven't really socialised for a long time, or maybe you're a new mum and you're trying to get yourself back out with adults. It can be really laborious.
Yeah, and I think, during the pandemic, particularly, there was a group, we've got students or young people starting in the workplace who didn't have that social connection. And then going back into it now. And I think, older people can actually play a huge part in that, in kind of gathering round and, maybe learning some of the whizzy tech skills from the younger generation, but actually teaching some of the younger people to socialize and actually to interact and what it's like to be in a meeting with somebody or to start a conversation with somebody that you don't know and to feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, and also I guess to sort of be all right when it doesn't feel comfortable because I think, I know somebody who finds it really hard to be around people. They would prefer just to be around animals. Right. And I totally get it. But I also think that that's potentially because it is hard being in a relationship or a friendship or a friendship group. It's not always easy. We're not looking for this like it's going to be a perfect sunshiny experience every time you go for lunch with someone, have dinner with mates. There might be a conversation that's a bit irritating or someone's doing something you don't like, and being able to rub alongside that's quite important.
No, definitely. And I think also it's important to protect your own space and to know your boundaries as well.
Yeah.
I've included a little section in the book on how to say no, because I think as women, we're quite bad at that.
We are. I've wrote a whole fucking book about it. It is so hard when you're a mum and you're trying to do well at work and you feel like you can't say no to anybody. It's really hard. Yeah. If you could go back and sit here right now with your 40-something-year-old self who was having a really shit time, what 3 things would you say to her or advise she changed in her life?
I would say number 1 is prioritise daylight. You really, Liz, you really have to get out more, and I don't mean clubbing. I mean, you get out, you're out more, you're in the morning. I know you're not an early bird, but you're just going to have to suck that one up and get out there, or very least open a window. Because being outside, ideally in nature, if you can find a park, if you can find a green space, and just enjoy those few moments of listening to the birds, looking at the shape of leaves on a tree. Just if you can take your shoes and socks off, but you don't need to. It's actually really about connecting with the light. I think the second thing I would say is Oh gosh, which one am I going to choose now? I think sleep is a superpower. If you can prioritize your sleep. For me, I have a very clear sleep routine. The things I do at night, I take my magnesium glycinate, I put lavender drops on my pillow, I sleep with a blackout blind, I have my earplugs, I have a bit of mouth tape. You know, for me, it's a whole ritual, and I'm telling my brain, right, it's bedtime now.
Yeah.
Anything that's worrying me, I write it down on a notepad and I leave it alone. I say to my brain, you don't need to chew over that at night because I've written on a bit of paper. You can come back to it
That's
in the morning.
That's a big one for me. Get it out of your head.
Get it out, and then, you know, the monkey brain will hopefully stop. And I think probably the third one is lighten up. You know, I've always been quite serious, and I think, you know, life is for living. I feel very fortunate to be here in my 60s now, you know, with a great young boyfriend who's kind of given me renewed energy and kind of hope in the future and all of that. And, you know, took me clubbing for the first time when I was 60 years old, you know, having never been. And so I think I would say, don't shut yourself up to possibilities. Don't think it has to be downhill. Because life can and will get better, and it may take a bit of time, but the key thing is to prioritize yourself and just to start those little steps, because they'll build and build and build, and you'll start to feel better and better, and your cells will start to respond, your skin will start to look better, your eyes will be brighter, you'll have more energy, and you'll want more. And that is quite simply what I want for all women.
Yes. Sorry, but we need to hear this constantly, because the narrative has been forever that women exclusively get to a certain point, probably my age, and then it's all fucking downhill.
Yeah.
Get ready, ladies. You've got menopause to look forward to.
Yeah,
You've
and
got everything
incontinence
sagging
and grey
and
hair,
incontinence.
and you're not going to be attractive.
You're screwed. It's such awful messaging. And I'm lucky. I've got lots of intergenerational friendships. Friends in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I had a friend in her 80s who sadly passed away. But those friendships have been so integral for me to understand that truly, to see women going, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm having a great time. I'm doing what I want to do. And that's the message we need to hear, rather than just start panicking at my age, like, oh my God, my best years are behind me. That's so bleak.
Oh, the best years are ahead.
Yes.
You know, they seriously are, because we know our own minds. We know what we like to do. We know how we like to spend our time. We've gathered, hopefully, probably a small but very good group of solid friendships. And yes, life can be shit. Yes, life is challenging and tough. Of course it is. But, you know, how we choose to respond to that is our own. That's our own making. And if we can equip ourselves in the best possible way physically, then everything becomes easier as a result. And it's definitely, I want to be sitting here with you in my 70s, in 10 years going, hey, yeah, my 60s were okay, but boy, do I feel great in my 70s. And then my 80s. Why can't that trajectory continue upwards?
I agree. How wonderful for us to contemplate that. It feels like a weirdly new way of thinking, and it shouldn't be. It's such a positive way to look at life.
But it's almost like aging for women is like the last taboo.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to age, are we? We have to look young, and we have to, feel young and be relevant. Otherwise, it's time just to sit quietly over in the corner and let the younger ones take their turn. Well, no, I think that's not right. We've earned it. By the time we get to, 40, 50, 60, beyond, boy, have we earned it. And now is our time. This is our time to enjoy it. My kids now, I've only got one left doing GCSEs, the rest have all gone. And it's like, bye-bye, thank you, bye-bye, thank you for coming. And it's like, yes, great, now it's time for me.
Yeah, what does Liz want? This is so exciting. I love it. I just love the messaging of all of it. And I urge everybody listening to this to read the book, because we've literally skimmed the surface. It's not possible to have this conversation unless we would just sit here until next Tuesday, because there is so much in there that needs to be read and understood. And I think it's also, there's loads of points where they're brilliant springboards to go off and go down a rabbit hole of interest.
Yeah, exactly. So I've put all the science in there, but I've also said, listen, you can skip this bit. And there's a little summary at the end of each chapter. Just do this checklist. And if you then want to go back and kind of, as you say, go down the rabbit hole into it, then you can.
It's great. As I said, I've dogged a million pages. And before we wrap up, there's things I'm even looking at now thinking, oh, fuck, I didn't ask about the mouth and all sorts. But anyway, we'll have to do a part two.
The oral microbiome, that's a good one.
Like scrape your tongue.
Totally scrape your tongue every morning.
And clean your teeth, obvs. One thing that we want to do on this podcast is make a playlist of really feel-good music. Maybe this could be a song that makes you feel vibrant and all the things we've talked about today, what would that song be that you would put on our playlist?
Oh my gosh. What would I put on your playlist? So because I was introduced to kind of clubbing later in life when I was in my 60s, I got massively into David Guetta.
Love.
Is that even how you pronounce it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I'm getting a bit embarrassed here. Have I said that right?
You mustn't be.
Goethe. And yeah, I mean, just some of his tracks, Cinema, Control, I just, what are the lyrics of Control? You have to let go of control,
putting it on
which
there.
is great because it's just about losing control in a good way.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of all the stuff that has been controlling and holding us down, and it's like, let's just rock it now.
I love that. And where is your happy place, Liz Earle?
Oh, my happy place is actually sitting in my pond in my garden.
Oh, gorgeous. Is that your cold water exposure?
Yeah, it is my
pond?
Cold water, yes. And I actually dug it at the bottom of my garden for the wildlife and like for the dragonflies and stuff. And then one day I looked at it and I thought, I could sit in that. And yeah, so I put in probiotics and stuff, so it's kept really clean. And and I go most mornings and I try and watch the sunrise if I'm at home, and I just sit in my pond, not for very long, just for maybe 1 or 2 minutes as the sun comes up, and I've got some little trees at the bottom of the garden, and I just kind of look up at the sky, and I'm just so grateful that I have all of that. And it just puts me in the right mindset for the day ahead.
I love it. You
can imagine me in my pond.
You in your pond with your biohacking in your pond. I love it. Look, this has been so fascinating, and I know that so many of my listeners who are a similar age to me or at a point in life where it all feels quite overwhelming just need to hear all of this. So thank you so much for your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Liz.